Hi everyone, welcome to this video tutorial on tutorial 2 movement. So we're continuing on from our previous tutorial, number 1, resources. So if you just open up your Gamemaker to the game you were previously working on, you should see something like this. If you can't see the sprites and the objects in your resource tree here, it's probably you just need to open the folder. So if you tick these little crosses, it will open and close the folders. So at the moment you can see we have our sprite paddle, our background main, our object paddle and our room main. So we're going to continue on. We're going to create a ball and we're also going to add some movement to the ball and we're going to add some movement to our paddles. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the sprites folder, create sprite. I'm going to call it SPR_ball and I'm going to load the sprite from our game assets folder that we used in the previous tutorial. So it's this one here, sprite_ball_0. So tick this and press open. So your sprite should load. There it is there. I'm then going to center the origin and I'm going to modify the mask to an ellipse shape. Basically because the ball is spherical, this will help with collision. So I'm going to say OK and OK. So we have our sprite ball there. So a sprite is just a graphic, so we need to add an object. We need to create an object for our ball. So I'm going to right click on objects folder, create object, obj_ball, and I'm going to assign that sprite that we just created to the object ball. I'm just going to tick OK now. OK. Then I'm going to go into my room main, just going to double click room main. So you can see where I put the paddle in the previous tutorial. I'm now going to go to the objects tab. I'm going to go to this drop down here, select object ball, and I'm going to put the ball in alongside the paddle. And then I'm just going to tick and save. I'm just going to run the game just to show you what it looks like at the moment. So if you go up here to the green play sign and run the game, so all your compile messages will come up here. So it's just compiling the game. And there's the game there. So at the moment, if I move my mouse or if I press my keyboard or my spacebar, nothing happens because we haven't added any actions or events to these objects. So we need to do that in order to get movement and to get input from the user. So I'm just going to close that again. I'm going to double click on my object ball and I am going to add an event. I'm going to add a step event. I'm going to go to my control tab over here and I am going to set variable. So this set variable window contains a number of settings. It says apply to. We're going to leave it at self because self means it applies to the object ball, which is what we want. The variable that you want to change, you put in here. So it's the X variable that we want to change. We're going to change the value to 2, which means 2 pixels per step, and we're going to take relative. So this is all going to happen along the x-axis. So basically our ball is going to move along the x-axis at 2 pixels per frame, adding 2 pixels at each frame. So it will essentially move to the right. So I'm just going to take OK. I'm going to take OK again, and I'm just going to run the game to show you. Okay, perfect. So there you go. There's the ball moving 2 pixels per frame on the x-axis. So this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. Perfect. So I'm just going to X out of the game. I'm going to go back into object ball. And I'm actually just going to delete this set variable. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go over to the control tab and I'm going to drag in a piece of code. So I'm going to do what I did in the set variable settings, except I'm going to do it in code. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a comment. So // move ball, move ball right. So it's the same in Java for comments, 2 forward slashes, and then you can write what you want, and this won't be read by the computer. This is just comments for yourself to read. Then I'm going to say x is equal to x plus 2. So it's exactly the same as when we said applies to self. What variable are we changing? We're changing x, and we're moving it 2 pixels by frame, and we're doing it each time, so it's relative. So x is equal to x plus 2. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to run it again, just to show you. So it's good to get into the habit of testing. When you change a bit of code or you change something in your game, before you change too much, you should run your code and test it and see if it's working. Now, there you go. It does exactly the same thing, except instead of using the drag and drop, we used a piece of code. Okay, perfect. So close out of there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some movement to our paddle. So to do this, we're going to double click on our paddle. We're going to add an event, keyboard right. So basically when I hit the right arrow key on the keyboard, we're going to go to control again and set variable. We're going to drag set variable in. We're going to say the variable is x and the value is 2, and we're going to tick relative. So again, we're saying move it 2 pixels per frame on the x-axis when I press the right arrow keyboard. So I'm going to say okay, okay, and again I'm just going to run the game to test. Okay, so now my paddle moves along with the ball as well. Perfect. So I'm just going to close that. We're going to go back into Object Paddle, and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to move it to the left. So I'm going to add event, keyboard, left. I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to drag in set variable again. Applies to self, as in it applies to the paddle itself. The variable is x, because we're still working off the x-axis, and the value is going to be -2. So we want to go -2. So we want it to go the other direction, and relative, and okay. So say okay, and then run the game again to test. Okay, perfect. So it goes right, and it goes left, and it goes right, and it goes left, and our ball is still just drifting aimlessly to the right there. But we're going to fix that in later tutorials. So perfect. So X out of there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add 3 more paddles to our game. So I'm going to go into our room main. I'm going to go to the Objects tab. Our paddle should appear here. If not, get it from the drop down here, Object Paddle. And I am just going to put 4 more paddles in the game like so. Now I'm just going to click on this paddle here on the left, because we're going to rotate it. So we're going to rotate this one, and we're going to rotate this one. So the one on the left, tick this. Where it says rotation here, we're going to put 90, and you can see that the paddle has rotated. We're going to do the same for the right, 90, and now they're all facing inwards. So we're just going to tick save and save that. We're going to go back into our object paddle. We're going to delete these events here. So that was just to show you how the paddle moves. We actually are going to get it to move with our mouse and not our keyboard. So I'm going to delete both these events here. Are you sure you want to delete them? Yes, please. And I am going to drag over. I'm going to add a step event, add event step, and I'm going to drag over from the control tab a series of these. So the first one I'm going to drag over is test variable. So it's going to be image underscore angle the value is going to be 90, and we're going to leave it at equal to. So we're going to say if the image angle is at 90, equals to 90, check if it is. Basically check if the image angle is equal to 90, and then if it is, we're going to do something else. So we're going to drag over other, and we're going to drag over set variable. So we're going to drag over set variable y to mouse underscore y. So we're working on the y-axis. We're saying if the angle is at 90, so if it's talking about the paddle on the left or the paddle on the right, the variable y is equal to the value of where the mouse is situated. So we're just going to say okay, and then we're going to end that block. Then we're going to say else, drag in another block, another set variable x to mouse underscore x. So again, if it's the other paddle you're talking about, the one down the bottom or the top, which is working on the x-axis, set the variable to where the mouse is situated on the x-axis. Say okay, and then drag over a closing block. Okay, so we're just going to save this, and then we're going to run it to test. So I'm going to say okay, and then we're going to run our game. And now we are able to control our paddles using our mouse. So up and down, left and right. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to close that now. I'm going to go back into my object paddle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do these actions, except instead of using this drag and drop format, I'm actually going to delete all of this, and I'm going to do it again, except using a piece of code. So I'm just going to right click and delete this step event. So am I sure I want to remove everything? Yes. So everything's gone, and I'm just going to do it again. So I'm going to add event, step, and I'm going to go to the control tab, except this time I'm going to drag in a piece of code, and I'm going to basically do the same thing except using code. So if image y is equal to mouse underscore y, close bracket, else open bracket. So the brackets are the equivalent of the start of the block and the end of the block. So your variable x is equal to mouse underscore x, close bracket. Okay, so it's exactly the same. We're saying if the image angle is equal to 90, so we're talking about the paddle on the left and the paddle on the right, then the y variable is equal to where the mouse is situated. So you can control the y variable by moving your mouse up and down. Or else you can control the x variable by moving the mouse from left to right. So when it says else, it means if the image angle is not equal to 90. So we're talking about the top and the bottom paddles. So it's exactly the same as what we did when we dragged in those set variables and that block of code, but we've just written it in a piece of code instead. So I'm just going to tick and save that, and I'm going to say okay, and I am going to run the game again. Perfect. So moving up and down and left and right. Excellent. So this concludes the tutorial for movement. The next tutorial we're going to look at is collision. So when the ball collides with the paddle, we're going to add code, actions and events to make this happen. Thanks for watching. Bye.